So there aren't actually, you can't pin them down somewhere. You can't say that they're one thing. They're more of a probability.
Let me ask a question about that because this is something I always wonder about. When they call it a probability, are they saying, like they say it's either a wave or a particle? But is the wave just a visual representation of all the places the particle could be in this? Because particles are moving all the time. When Feynman talks about quantum physics, he always talks about particles jiggling. Everything's jiggling underneath. It's all moving all the time. So maybe in this jiggling, the particles are jiggling in this wave, and that particle is somewhere along that wave, and then when you measure it, oh, that's where it is on the wave. Is that what it means by probabilities, or is it more like the particles are everywhere and then there's just some sort of probability of where it is? I mean, that's the part I don't get.
I don't think the scientists themselves really do, to be honest.
Oh.
But that's why I hesitate to call it particles. Because say we're having this visual image right now, particles dancing right now. We are talking about physical particles. But what Wolfgang Smith exactly says is that they're really not. They're not existing. They're between being and non-being, as Heisenberg would say.
Exactly. More like potential.
Yeah, potential, like Aristotle would say. Both of us don't really know what we're talking about. We're dancing through this thinker. We're making our way through it. But it's extremely interesting. When you observe the quantum particles, you affect how they react, and then you bring them into being. You bring them into existence, which is completely enigmatic. We spoke about Descartes' notion of bifurcation, which basically says that the world consists of things of the mind and things outside the mind, basically. And it's also something to do with the metaphysics of Aristotle, which is like a subject-object duality. And both of them bring you to an idea that we are observers that are disconnected from the natural world. We can observe it and we're not a part of it. But in quantum physics, you really see that we're completely entangled in what we measure. So much so that we completely affect the outcome of the measurement itself. So this whole idea of us being separated from nature is directly falsified by quantum physics, and which is also why I think that physicists have been so confused by it, let's say.
What that really does is take you right back into Barfield's thought that in very early humanity, people felt much more as though they were not only connected to nature, but that nature and human thought and consciousness were all connected together. So there was more of a feeling of being a part of the world and not being a separate entity looking at the world.
There's this guy called Sadhguru. He's like he's a bit of a guru, and he says, if you finally understand that you're one with the world, you would never hurt it because you would never cut off your own hand. When you start to disconnect yourself from the world, you disconnect from yourself, basically. So you're no longer aligned with yourself or with the world at large. And I really like discovering this work because it gives us an opportunity for people to recover from this through a scientific way, which I think is such a strength, because we kind of need this bridge right now to get back. And Wolfgang he's a perfect person to offer us that. According to Wolfgang, the quantum realm is actually not here. It's also not the physical realm, because the physical realm is like below the corporeal. It's kind of like a derivative of the corporeal. The quantum realm is more outside of their circumference. So between being and non-being. And basically what we're doing when we measure these things is we bring them into the corporeal plane. So we go from the quantum, which is outside, into the corporeal by measuring. So the measurement instrument, or even the human eye, brings this into our existence. So we are completely responsible for doing this. Whereas the scientists would say quantum particles give being. So basically if you aggregate a lot of quantum particles, you have a table. Wolfgang Smith said, no, that's not true. they actually receive being from us. We give them being by observing them because we are at a higher ontological plane. And the same holds true for going up here and going up here, because we also get being. We don't, like, you don't get a human being by just aggregating molecules and blood and skin. You actually have to receive it, but that we'll leave that for a later time. Now, the form of causation that he says is necessary for this to happen is not horizontal causation. Horizontal causation is the causation that we are used to. So it is basically in time. So if I knock over my glass and the water falls on the ground, that is horizontal causation. My hand moved, it's in time, it's in space. Vertical causation is an atemporal event. And he proves this by basically saying that when we measure the quantum particles, when the quantum particles go from non-being to being, the time that passes is faster than the speed of light. So main takeaways from the book: vertical causation and moving up into a higher ontological plane. So that's mostly what I want to say with this icon.